Which reigning division champions are most likely to be dethroned? Is it going to be the NFC South Division champion or the NFC West Division champion? Which teams from the AFC and NFC are the most likely to lose their division crown? Watch the full video to find out and see why these teams are vulnerable and why the ones are least vulnerable and which ones are the most vulnerable. Let's get into it. So basically, number 8 is going to be the one that's most likely going to, that is least likely to get dethroned, and then number 1 being that's the one that's most likely to get dethroned. So without further ado, let's get into it. And number 8, the least likely to lose the division, is the Kansas City Chiefs. I know this one was a little tough. I mean, the Chargers are their main contender, and then the main contenders thing, one being the team that's most likely to overtake the defending division champion over as the new one and automatically getting in the playoffs, and then 2 being the second most, and then 3 being the least likely. I don't see the Raiders being as much of a threat to the Chiefs. I believe their offense can just light up their defense every time they face off. Broncos, they don't have the quarterback, but they do have a great defense and good skill positions. So they're not as good as the Chargers with the best, second best quarterback in the division. The Chiefs have the best, but the Chargers have good receivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams to pair with Justin Herbert. They improved their offensive line with Lindsey and others. And they got Austin Eckler, who I like out of the backfield. And then defensively, they have Bosa, and they have Derwin James. Derwin James can stay healthy. They have other good pieces. They got Asante Samuel. They got Rashawn Slater, so they had a really good draft. And I project them to have a higher win total than the Broncos or Raiders. But as far as the Chiefs go, I think they have the highest probability to repeat. Their offensive line is really good, and now we pair that with Mahomes and Hill and Kelsey. Really, the only thing that's holding the Chiefs back is outside of Tyreek, what receiver is going to step up. But if Mahomes has time, someone else may be able to get open. And then the defense, if you take Chris Jones out of the pass rush game, you have Frank Clark there, but he's up and down. And then the linebackers are iffy, so it's like the defense and but the Chiefs should be good. I project them to win the division again and have the easiest time doing it. Now next, you got the Packers. I just say this because the NFC North is weak. Is Aaron Rodgers going to leave or stay? If Aaron Rodgers leaves, then that pushes the Packers up this list to more likely of a chance to get dethroned or lose the division crown. But if Rodgers stays, like he most likely will, because the Packers aren't trading him, he's under contract, then the Packers will be champions again. Their main contender is the Vikings with that explosive offense. Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Those guys can put up a lot of points, making Kirk Cousins' life easier, making him have better stats. But the defense, while it does have talent, it's still lacking in the cornerback area, the secondary, and their offensive line. They patched it up a little bit, but it's still on the iffy side. And so the Vikings are the most likely team in my book to overtake the Packers, but the Bears and the Lions. Bears got Justin Fields, and Lions upgraded their offensive line, but both teams have a lot of flaws. Bears defense is getting worse. Offensive line still not the best, and then receiver weaponry core isn't the best. And then the Lions just have holes everywhere outside of that superb offensive line. So the Packers still have first team all pros all over the place, like Devontae Adams, Jair. They got Rodgers as of now. Bakhtiari that comes back healthy. They have a lot of young offensive linemen. If they could develop, then that offensive line could stay elite. They have Aaron Jones, they have Zadarius Smith. You can go on and on about the great Packers players. So I have them at 7 because I feel like the teams ahead of the Packers are more likely to not repeat as division champions. And at number 6, you got the Washington football team. Their main contender, I see dethroning them, is the New York Giants. Actually, the football team might have the best defense in football, and I believe in an offense versus game, if you have to have a defense like the Washington football team, where we just have so many pass rushers, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, they have Deron Payne up front, they just drafted Damian Davis. And the secondary, they have Kyle Fuller, they get William Jackson, they have a really good underrated secondary now. They have a really strong front 7, so I believe they're going to be good against the run, get after the quarterback, good against the pass. So that's going to really win them a lot of games inside of this division and within their schedule. And they get, I'm switching teams, and they get Ryan Fitzpatrick in there, and that's going to be able to make the football team win a lot of games with Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin. That their offensive line is the main concern, but the NFC East is pretty weak, and I think the football team is the best in that division, but the one that could dethrone them from repeating as back-to-back division champions is the Giants, who have that up-and-coming defense. I think they have a really solid defense, and then their great skill positions. Their main downfall is that offensive line. So, and I take Fitzpatrick over Jones, but Giants, then Cowboys with that all that talent on offense, but the defense is lacking. We don't know what Micah Parsons is going to be. We don't know what DeMarcus Lawrence is going to be. So, like, the Cowboys have questions on their defense and coaching staff. So that just spells a bad matchup when they face the football team. And then the Eagles have a long way to go with their secondary. We don't know how Jalen Hurts is going to perform in Nick Sirianni's offense. The offensive line is aging. Receivers, they just got Devontae Smith, but outside of that, it's like, what really is there? So that is what I think will happen with the NFC East. Football team has a really good chance to repeat as division champions. Bills, I have them at 5 because I have them this high on vulnerability for such a good team because of the Patriots. I feel like the Bills have the better quarterback and better passing game than the Patriots. It's better receivers and better quarterback. Josh Allen over Cam Newton any day of the week. But the Patriots, I feel like, have the better defense, better offensive line, and better rushing attack. So the Patriots could be taking over the Buffalo Bills. And if they just get good production from their passing game this coming year, Patriots, I believe, have a better coaching staff. So if they could just get good enough production from the pass game, they could be a really dangerous team. But I'm sticking with the Bills here at 5. Other contenders, I believe the Dolphins are a bigger contender than the Jets to the Bills. With their secondary, Tua's got some good weapons now with Waddle and Fuller. Offensive line, I don't like it, but the Dolphins are really well coached, so who knows? The Dolphins could just blow up and take the AFC East. And then the Jets, I believe they still have a long ways to go. Rookie quarterback Zach Wilson, I think he's going to be good. But the Corey Davis signing, it was necessary, but I don't know how he's going to perform. You have Jamison Crowder, can Denzel Mims develop? And then the defensively, Carl Lawson and Quinton Williams are a nice pair up front, but that secondary is lacking in the rushing game. I think it's going to lack, but they're improving the offensive line, but the offensive line still has a ways to go. So I think the Bills are in good position to repeat as division champs, but they got to look out for this Patriots, man. The Bills' passing game is great, and that's kind of where the league is right now. But they got to figure out some way to run the football better. And then defensively, they have to hope Rousseau pans out as a pass rusher. He's switching positions. He's very raw, has a lot of potential, but he's very raw. So they're going to have to coach him up, but they're going to have to find a better pass rush, a better rush game. But they're good. They're good enough in the secondary. They're really good explosive offense. So Bills, they could be knocked off, but they again have a good chance to repeat. So 4 at the Titans. Now this is the part of the rankings where these teams start to get more and more vulnerable. These are the teams that I think are more likely to lose their division crown. And that starts off with the Titans. The Titans are a boom or bust team. They have talent, but they just lack in a lot of areas. At quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, good. He's really underrated, but the Titans need to get that rush game going with Henry to create the play action passes for Tannehill downfield, and they lose Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis, 2 huge losses that the Titans are going to feel in their offense. So if teams just stack the box versus Derrick Henry, and they have one good corner on the outside, that's going to make it very rough on the Titans because A.J. Brown is now their lone talented receiver. And then defensively, the Titans, they got Bud Dupree on the offseason. They got Danico Autry to help Jeffrey Simmons. And if they let Harold Landry rush the passer, their pass rush could be good. But I'm just not confident in their outside game or outside corners. Janoris Jenkins is a pretty decent one, but they lost corners in free agency. Kevin Byard is a good safety. But if teams just stack the box against Henry and have a corner that can cover A.J. Brown, it's going to make life tough on Ryan Tannehill unless someone else can step up. So the Colts there, they could be a tough matchup for the Titans with their defensive game plan, and then the weak secondary of the Titans could be problematic. But the Texans and Jaguars aren't really any kinds of threats right now, but Trevor Lawrence could boom up and just take over and maybe bump the Titans off. But the Titans aren't higher on this list in terms of vulnerability because I believe the Colts have a really good chance to overtake it, but there's not multiple teams that really have that much of a chance. But I think the Colts have a really good chance of becoming AFC South champs. Jaguars have Trevor and good receivers, but they have a lot of good young pieces. I just don't think they're there yet. They have a lot of tough matchups on their schedule. And then the Texans are just nowhere near to winning a game. They're just dumpster fire with an organization completely. And they're probably the worst team in football. But the Colts have a big chance to get past the Titans here. And then 3, the Seahawks. It's because they're in the NFC West, and because I don't think they're the best team in the NFC West. They might be the worst team in the NFC West, which is not a put down because all 4 teams are playoff caliber teams. Starting with the Rams, I think they're the number 1 contender, showing that I have no bias towards my Cardinals. Because if I was really biased, I'd put the Cardinals as the main contender. But anyways, Matthew Stafford coming to the Rams upgrades their passing game. He can hit Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, and then they add speed with Atwell and Jackson. So I think that gives Sean McVay, along with Higbee, a lot of different looks and a lot of different plays they can draw up and really do well with there. And then defensively, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey are still there. They lost John Johnson, lost Troy Hill, but I believe that they could still play good defense on the Seahawks. And also, they lost Brandon Staley, but the Rams still have a talented defense. They also still have Floyd, but they lost a couple of guys there. So I think the Rams could definitely. They can also run the ball with Akers, so they are really have a really good chance to overtake the Seahawks. The Cardinals also have a good chance to take over the Seahawks. If Kyler Murray can stay healthy, they improve their team quite a bit, starting with the offensive line, adding in Rodney Hudson, still a top 3 center in the game, just really good and really sets the tone for the rest of their offensive line. There's Humphreys and Pugh, who are pretty underrated, and then you have Beecham and other guys. So Murray can run around. If Cliff Kingsbury can improve as a play caller, that's really the Cardinals' main concern is Kingsbury. But they have Hopkins, and if Rondale Moore can stay healthy, that passing game could be really lethal. And then Edmonds and Connor are a nice 1-2 punch there. So you have Kirk, if he can continue to develop. They have Isabella. They have a lot of options at wide receiver in those spread sets. So Cardinals could be overtaking the Seahawks. Defensively, J.J. Watt was the most double-teamed pass rusher, the highest double-teamed pass rusher last year with the Texans, because they don't really have a good complementary pass rusher. So with Chandler Jones on the other side, teams are going to have to respect J.J. Watt, or they're going to have to respect Chandler Jones, and they're going to have to respect Marcus Golden, who is a pretty decent pass rusher, and also Jordan Phillips and those guys. If they can develop inside where the Cardinals are a little weak, they can get some helps with the linebackers, Simmons and Zaven Collins, so they have talent up front. And then in the secondary with Malcolm Butler, who gives up his fair share of completions, but he can pick the ball off, and he's good in the return game. Had a really good season with the Titans last year. That goes unnoticed. Marco Wilson is a question mark at the outside too, but I mean, he could boom or bust, but Byron Murphy's really good in the slot. And then you have Baker and Jalen Thompson, a good safety duo. So the Cardinals have talent all around the board. If they could just be pulled in with good health and good coaching, they could be a really scary team for others. And then the Niners, if they can just stay healthy all the way, they could also repeat as champions. Jimmy G, they might start first, but the Niners have Kyle Shanahan, what he can do with that rushing attack, and then they have Kittle, and they have Bosa, and they have still a talented defense, still a talented front seven. So the Seahawks are very vulnerable for losing their crown. They have 3 really talented teams, all of which can win the division. The Seahawks still, they haven't improved their offensive line too much. They added Gabe Jackson, but that's not going to fix much, just one player. And then they got Everett to help out at tight end. They got back Carson. They still have Metcalf and Lockett, but as you saw in the second half of the season, that Seahawks offense wasn't doing good at all. Their defense was the one coming up, and as far as cornerbacks go, they're not really there yet, but they still have a strong front. Jamal Adams, Carlos Dunlap, Bobby Wagner, so a deep defense with that could do something, but I just don't know if they can all gel at the same time. I just don't really like Pete Carroll as a head coach right now for the Seahawks. So they're pretty vulnerable. They have a tough schedule, tough division. So we'll see what happens with the Seahawks. But the Steelers are way more vulnerable, and they were so close to being the most vulnerable. I mean, the Steelers, I can guarantee you right now, are not winning the division next year. They have the Browns, who have one of the best rosters in football, just really stacked offensive line, good receivers with Landry and OBJ coming back. They have Austin Hooper. Yeah, Austin Hooper. They have him. Chubb and Hunt are really good. Mayfield's developing nicely with Stefanski. And then defensively, Garrett, Denzel Ward. They add Clowney. They add JOK. They got better in the secondary with John Johnson, Troy Hill. So they have talent all over the place and are one of the most complete teams. And my AFC North champion, main contender for the Steelers. And then the Steelers just really offensive line is just looking like terrible. They added Najee Harris to try to improve the run game, but who's going to block for him? So Pat Freiermuth, I like him at tight end, but really Big Ben needs his protection and rush game, and both aren't going to be there unless Najee Harris somehow literally runs insanely behind a terrible offensive line. They have Claypool and Juju, but they have off the field issues and too much TikTok dancing and not good locker room culture, so that's concerning. Defensively, they still have a great defense, but they lose Bud Dupree. They lose a couple of guys. They lose Mike Hilton, so that's pretty big hit on their defense. Two important guys. So the Steelers aren't looking as hot right now. And then Dwayne Haskins is the next option behind Big Ben. Mike Tomlin as a coach, he's a good locker room voice, but as terms of the scheme and all that other stuff, it just hasn't been working for Mike Tomlin. And then the Ravens also could really overtake the Steelers with Lamar and that rushing attack with that offensive line. And then defensively, they took a big hit on their pass rush, but their secondary is good if they can get good contributions from Bateman and the edge rusher they drafted. Then they could really see an increase in wins. And then the Bengals are the least harmful to the Steelers, but they're still a threat. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that could be a great connection. It's just the offensive line scares me, but the skill positions plus quarterback is really good for the Bengals. Pass rush is a concern. They add Hendrickson, but they lose Lawson. But their secondary, led by Jesse Bates, should be good. So these three teams are really knocking at the Steelers' door. Steelers lost a lot of talent, and Browns and Ravens especially could be on the way to snatch that crown. But number one is the New Orleans Saints, obviously in the NFC South. Because why? Because the Buccaneers are probably going to overtake it. It's a 99% guarantee. So that's why the Steelers were ranked first. But if the Bucs won the division last year, then we wouldn't have this conversation. The Bucs would be number 8. But the Saints won it last year, and the Saints lost guys like Janoris Jenkins and Trey Hendrickson and Drew Brees and all those guys. So now the Saints, outside of Michael Thomas, who is iffy, don't have much of a receiver core. And then defensively, outside of Marshawn Lattimore, they aren't really that strong. They still have good pieces together, but Jameis Winston as the starter, I just don't really know if he's going to do well. Sean Payton could help with him a lot, but the Buccaneers just have the insane run defense. They have Tom Brady. They have the great pass rush. They have the insane offensive line. They have the insane weapons. They just have a complete roster all across the board, just all this talent. And they could be 20-0 realistically. They have an easy schedule. So Buccaneers are most likely going to be NFC South champions, unless they just injuries just all just start piling up. Just injury after injury after injury is the only thing stopping the Buccaneers. And then Panthers have a young, talented team, up-and-coming team, young and talented with Derek Brown and with Brian Burns and with Reddick. Nice defensive front. And then DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, those boys in the receiving core. McCaffrey's really good. So Jeremy Chin, JC Horn. So they're a pretty big threat to the Saints. And then the Falcons, they're probably going to trade Julio. We don't know what they're going to get in return, but I'd assume it's after June 1st. Today is the 27th, so that's going to be in like 5 days to start looking and seeing what's going to happen there for the Julio Jones trade. But they have Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan. They could be making a lot of noise. Offensive line is a little iffy. Sometimes plays good, sometimes doesn't. Todd Gurley didn't work out for them last year. They got to figure out a rush game and got to figure out some defense. But Falcons are probably their least concern. Bucaneers, very concerning for the Saints. So the Saints are the most vulnerable team to lose their division crown, and the least vulnerable is the Chiefs. But thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Road to 400. Comment down below what other videos you'd like to see. Comment down below I subscribed if you did already. We're trying to grow this channel. Last video did really bad, so hopefully this one does better. But thank you all so much for everything. See you in the next one. Peace.